Tonight we want to tell you about an important story that almost no one pays attention to or has even ever heard of. In a remote desert land on the northwest side of Africa, a nomadic people see their homes taken from them by an imperial power. Hundreds of thousands are driven away and forced to live as refugees. This happened in the Western Sahara, a colony of Spain, one of the last colonies in Africa until 1975, when the Moroccans moved in saying they were reclaiming a territory that had always been theirs. But the people who lived there, known as the Sahrawis, were displaced, and they now live under Moroccan rule in Western Sahara or in refugee camps in neighboring Algeria. For years, they've said they're prisoners of a Moroccan occupation, living in dire poverty, sometimes thrown in jail, even tortured in their own country. To break the stalemate over who controls the Western Sahara, the international community has called for a referendum, a chance for the Sahrawi to vote on independence. And even though Morocco agreed, more than 20 years later, the vote still hasn't happened. This terrible standoff also hasn't received much international attention. But now, finally, a spotlight is shining on it from, of all places, an Oscar-winning actor, a Spanish one, Javier Bardem, who starred most recently as the bad guy in the latest James Bond film Skyfall. As a Spaniard, he says he feels an obligation to set right the humanitarian crisis that his country left behind. He's made a documentary film called Sons of the Cloud, The Last Colony, to publicize their plight. Take a look.
I am here as an independent citizen. I'm not affiliated with any political group or representing any government. It is our duty as citizens to remind our leaders of the responsibilities when injustice occurs. It is an international disgrace that generations of Sahrawis are born, live and die in these camps, and their compatriots suffered under repression in the territory. Almost no one has heard of this abuse because journalists and human rights organizations are not allowed to visit the territory.
Bardem is now taking his film and his fight to the United Nations and from there to congressional leaders on Capitol Hill. And he joins me now. Mr. Bardem, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
What was your first encounter with the people of Western Sahara? Why did you even go there?
It was 2008, and there's this film festival in the desert, in the refugee camps called Fi Sahara. And then I went there, and we were living there for 10 days in the refugee camps. And of course, I knew about it, I heard about it, but as usually, when you have a real contact, a direct contact with the reality, it changes your mind.
You're here in the United States, you're showing the film at the United Nations, and you're going to Congress, I think.
Yeah.
You know, the U.S. is a big supporter of Morocco, and many of your interviewees, including American interviewees, including former U.S. ambassadors to the UN in the film, say that one of the reasons why this doesn't change is because the U.S. always supports Morocco in the Security Council. How difficult was it for you to get a hearing in Congress, and what will you tell them this week?
It's about trying to make common sense. I mean, I think the first and the most important point is to make sure that Morocco understand that for their own benefit, they should really be able to fix the situation, which is the human rights condition by MINURSO really monitoring the human rights in the area. And that implies US, that implies France, that implies Morocco, that implies EU, that implies many countries. And that's what we want to achieve.
Sitting in the middle of all of this, which we haven't yet discussed, is the fact of the referendum. You know, more than 20 years ago, the Moroccans, the US, the people of Western Sahara, everybody agreed to a referendum which has not been implemented. Do you think this film will try, do you think you can have an impact towards pushing it in that direction? I mean, I know that's a lofty question, but
yeah,
that's the point.
It's the point. The thing is, we are movie makers, and we are not politicians, but we have an opinion. We have the right to have an opinion, and we have the right to express it. Not only the right, but the obligation to do it. And we do it through the movies. And we have done this documentary because that's the way we express ourselves. And yes, we think that it may create a little change. Like, for example, we are here now, sitting down, talking about it. And that's huge for the Sahrawi people.
And then you'll be in the UN?
Then we'll be in the UN. We've been there already, and we'll go to DC, to the Capitolio. And it's big that we are showing the movie to the congressmen and have a panel to discuss the situation.
When I first met you, when we did an interview before the film was finished and you were making your first presentation to the UN, you spoke very eloquently about justice and injustice and about how it is your responsibility to speak out. So what do you say with the obvious critics who'll say, well, you know, here's a movie star taking on another cause?
Well, I won't say anything. They have the right to say whatever they want. I mean, of course. The thing is, beyond any job that we represent, there's a human being and there's a citizen with the right to speak. I mean, it's obvious.
One of the issues, and we will put that to the ambassador, but one of the issues is what happens next. You know, many of the people of Western Sahara spoke to you and talked about, you know, their hopes for the future, and they still hang on, and as you said, they don't have resentment against Spain, but they just want their rights. But they've seen the Arab Spring. Do they feel that they can ever be part of that?
Well,
what do they say to you about that?
I mean, they are very peaceful people, and that's the thing that struck me the most, maybe, that under these horrible circumstances and conditions, they really were able to maintain the faith in justice, which sometimes is kind of unnerving to think that after 37 years of political neglect, they still believe in it.
When I talked to you before, I was saying, you know, again, how come you took this cause? And you were saying it's a little bit like a hot potato, like nobody wants to discuss it. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, it's a big hot potato because it involves many interest, economical interest, and realpolitik, as we speak in the movie, no? Which is basically don't do anything about something that you don't know what to do about. But at the same time, people are dying, and people are starving, and people are going through a very major crisis of different issues, like human rights, for example. So I just feel like the movie really show how difficult it is to put people together just to speak about it. Not mention the Morocco government, which they didn't even want to be part of it.
Well, I very much appreciate you coming in, and as we go out, and we will have the Moroccan ambassador to the UN, I want to play this clip from the documentary when you're trying to reach the Moroccan ambassador to Spain to have him participate in your documentary. Look at this clip.
Vamos a llamar al señor Sulem, que es el embajador de Marruecos en España, y a ver qué nos dice. No va a coger.
اتصالات المغرب ترحب بكم. الهوة الصوتية لمخاطبكم غير مشتغلة. نعتذر عن عدم تلبية طلبكم.
Well, you got no response then.
Yeah, that's one of the few. I mean, but the problem is that I think they portray themselves when you don't speak, and it's so obvious that you don't want to be part of something which is very democratic, which is let's put opinions together and let's try to make a point out of it. Then you're speaking too loud.